Alright amigos, I'm back. Let's get on with part 2 of my childhood memories. Let's go back to 92 and 93. In 1992, I became exposed to the Jetsons Meet the Flintstones, which was a classic Hanna-Barbera crossover. And I tell ya, that movie was truly ahead of its time, because it had some really well-known voice actors, like Daws Butler, Don Messick, Mel Blanc, Frank Welker, Gene Vanderpyle, Janet Waldo, among various others. Also in 92, I was exposed to Twice the Night Before Christmas from Rankin Bass. That's right, Rankin Bass, one of Hanna-Barbera's primary main rivals, aside from Filmation and Ruby Spears. And speaking of Ruby Spears, I was also exposed to the Punky Brewster cartoon, not the live-action sitcom, because the live-action show was really bad compared to the Ruby Spears cartoon. And I was also exposed to Kissy Fur from Deke, which also had some familiar voice actors like Ed Gilbert and Terrence McGovern, the voice of Launchpad from DuckTales and Darkwing Duck, but I'll talk about them in a couple minutes. Then we transitioned back to 1993, where I was also exposed to Sebastian Starbear First Mission in the Disney adaptation of Alice in Wonderland, which I already did a 2-part review of. Sebastian Starbear in particular is truly a really special Dutch cartoon from the early 90s. And I've actually watched it in both English and German, but not the original Dutch version, which is really odd. But I do want to see it in Dutch someday, with English subtitles. But I have seen it in both English and German, which are both dub tracks, while the Dutch track is the original audio track. Then we fast forward to December 24th, 1994, where I got the Star Maker Storybook box set, which consisted of 5 lesser-known adaptations of classic tales, like Filmation's Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night, Bevan Field's Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, Toei Animation's The Little Mermaid, and Inoki Film's Thumbelina, A Magical Story. The 5th one in particular was the only one that had a slipcase. The only one in that box set that had a slipcover. The other 4 tapes did not have it. Only Thumbelina has the special privilege, because that fairy tale really means a whole lot to me. And the voice acting was really touches my heart, and so were the memorable songs. And I've already done a 3-part review on it a couple years ago. Then we transitioned to 1995, around January. That's when I saw Tatsunoko's Samurai Pizza Cats for the first time. And those 3 Pizza Cats were very something special. You know, Speedy Cerviche, the leader of the group, Polyester, and Guido Anchovy. And they were always battling those Ninja Crows, which was led by the Big Cheese, with a very funny Paul Lynde impersonation. The Pizza Cats are samurai, and I like to note, their antics take your breath away. Trust me, I remember Samurai Pizza Cats back in 1995. Back when Mighty Max was still on the air. And I have seen Mighty Max for a bit around 95. when Mighty Max was still on the air. Let's rewind to around summer of 1994. I was watching an episode of Procter & Gamble's As the World Turns, but then for some reason my dad had the stereo on full blast, and I couldn't hear all that dramatic drama that the show was going for. I'm not kidding. My dad had that stereo on full blast. And speaking of stereo, CBS was still using their killer stereo sound system that the network was using at the time. That's why I call it the CBS stereo sound era, which began in 1988 and ended in 1997. That's right. It began in 1988 and ended in 1997. That's a total of 9 years. Okay, fast forward to around from March to June of 95. There were 2 movies that came out on VHS that year. Walt Disney's The Lion King and 20th Century Fox's The Page Master. The latter in particular was the one that had the behind-the-scenes footage of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, which was about to be released in movie theaters that summer. But I didn't buy the VHS tape until 10 years later. For now, I was satisfied with Walt Disney's The Lion King and 20th Century Fox's The Page Master, which had Macaulay Culkin from the Home Alone franchise and Christopher Lloyd from the Back to the Future franchise. And speaking of which, Back to the Future at one point actually had a cartoon show, which had Dan Castellaneta as Doc Brown. And it also had Christopher Lloyd and Bill Nye in the live-action segments. Okay, this should be enough for part 2. Stay tuned for part 3. Stay tuned, amigos, and I'll be right back after these messages. Yep, I do mean my show will return after these messages.